Hey everyone, it's Flex. Welcome to Build in Isolation. It's like the Build series, Sydney, you know and love, but from the comfort of our own homes because we're staying in and staying safe. Today I'm joined by a very, very, very special guest. He's a singer, a songwriter, an actor, a model, a musician, a poet.
Model.
Take it, own it.
Okay, thank
pretty
you.
much a household name at this point. It's Cody Simpson. What
That's the
a
first time I've been
treat.
called a model explicitly. That's awesome. Thank you.
Every now and then I like to just add different slashes and see what sticks.
Cook,
Tech entrepreneur.
amateur tattoo artist.
You take some, you leave some, it's whatever.
Exactly.
So right now it's...
How you going?
Look, it's okay. It's 9:15. I'm in Sydney. I've got some juice to start the day because I don't drink enough water.
I got a little coffee over here.
You see, it is what it is. What time is it? Where are you?
It's I'm in California. I'm in LA. It's 4:15 in the afternoon.
You're isolating in America. Do you live there now? You're still technically in Australia.
Yeah, I live in LA. I've lived here for probably 8 years now. So
okay, so you're American.
Really long, at least almost a third of my life at this point. So.
Geez, you're a local.
Yeah.
And how is it? Have you been able to see family, or are they isolating in Australia?
The same way I'm seeing you right now, mostly just FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, all that stuff. It's been, my sister was over here like right when this all started. And so we did like the first few days together, and then she flew home, had to do 14 days in isolation in like an Airbnb on the Gold Coast. And it was wild. Like she couldn't see my parents or grandparents or relatives. And I've been I'm on like week 5 at this point.
You're a veteran.
So it's crazy. Yeah. I've got my like studio set up here now, and I'm like really figuring out or trying to figure out how to just work and thrive from home, you know?
Waiting for the walls to start speaking to you.
They already have, you know?
What are they saying? Yeah. So how was quarantining from a hotel completely alone to in your space with all your equipment? How are you keeping sane properly?
It's a struggle some days, you know. It's like I think for all of us, we have these good and bad days. Some days we're thriving and are able to be kind of optimistic and hopeful and creative, and some days, you know, there's a little more pessimism, a little more, you know, claustrophobia involved. And so, yeah, it's like anything really. I'm just trying to kind of persevere and stay as positive as we can, and, you know, do what we're being told to do to hopefully try and get through it as quickly as like safely, as cautiously as possible. And so it's like an unprecedented time. Like none of us have ever done this shit before, you know, so we don't know, you know, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to deal with it. And we're all just kind of trying to take it one day at a time at this point. So
it feels pretty character affirming to know that we are all doing it together. It's a new sense of community in like a weird way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and that's kind of something I've been talking about to friends and family and stuff, is that it may seem like it's tearing people apart, but in a weird way, it's almost like waking people up and bringing people together too, you know, and connecting us in like weird ways and making us have to be a little more imaginative and creative more than usual. So yeah, that's how I've been feeling.
It's so meta in some way. But what I find to be really quite nice is like obviously keeping abreast of the severity of the situation and not trying to minimize it, but seeing like little acts of kindness on my feed has been really like, oh, like, damn, there is something nice amongst this drama. Like the other day I saw a post where somebody was offering to get groceries for people in the community who are immunocompromised. And it's like, oh, you're going to leave your house and get groceries and deliver them just because that's what we're doing.
Yeah. It's also encouraged me to maybe be more thoughtful and more considerate. Too, like last week, I went down to my local hospital and had like one of the local Mexican restaurants make 120 tacos and threw on like a mask and gloves and went and delivered them to the front door of the hospital there, just because all the healthcare workers and medics and people like that are really kind of not unsung heroes. I think people are extremely appreciative of them at the moment, but like, you know, wanting to be as kind of gracious towards them as possible. I think, you know, at this time especially, and just little acts of kindness like that, whether they really make a difference or not, at least like letting people like that know that, you know, they're appreciated at a time like this is important, I think, you know. So.
Which is so lovely. It's little things. And I'm sure, like, I could imagine if I was doing a job on that scale that was saving lives, a little like taco to say thank you would be like very, very, very much
Oh yeah,
appreciated.
yeah, exactly.
Little snack. I'm like,
The way
hold the coriander.
at least the way to my heart's through my belly, at least, you know. So I appreciate that.
It was written. And what's also been kind of sick is like, you know, character firming in the sense that everybody's being really nice to each other, but also I'm seeing like my friends and family develop like these talents during isolation. Like, oh, suddenly like, okay, my brother's best friend can bake. Like, when have you ever cooked
Yeah,
in
yeah,
your
yeah.
life? Like,
I'm becoming a pretty solid cook about all this too, like just making things that you wouldn't usually have time to do, because usually it's like you're just on the go and you're like, oh, I'll just do pasta and sauce and like
yeah,
call it a night. But you know, now it's like, oh, I have hours to like try this new, you know, elaborate dish or something like that. And so it's been really fun. And like, at least for me, it's like I've had a lot of time to like practice guitar and play and write music. And you know, I've been releasing my new poetry book, and so I've just like had a lot of time to do things like that, and spend a little more time and be a little more like sort of, you know, in solace, kind of focused on it than I would usually if you just running around all day like, you know, madmen like we most of us usually are.
running amok.
You know, and so it's kind of giving us a little, forcing us into some introspection and a little alone time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But more on poetry, I guess, because you are a singer and a songwriter, poetry isn't too far from, you know, what we know you for, but it's like, you know, a whole release, Prince Neptune. Let's talk about that. How long have you
Yeah.
been writing poetry for?
Since I was little, I used to enter
Ah,
like poetry and prose contests in school. And I remember like when I was probably in like grade 3 or 4, and I entered my first one. I entered a poem into it, and I won the competition. And I was like, it was kind of a really encouraging, almost wake up call, being like, hang on a second, maybe this is something I have a natural feel for. And that's right around the time I started seriously writing songs as well. And so that all kind of started like at the same time and came hand in hand. And obviously songwriting and music is what I became known for initially. For me, they've always been like synchronized in kind of art forms that, at least for me, come hand in hand. And so I've started taking poetry really seriously when I was around 18, 19. Went through a rebellious phase in my life, like left my record label, went independent, started just like doing nothing but like playing guitar and surfing and stuff. And that's when I kind of kicked off the whole leaving behind, you know, pop and teen pop and all that, and moving into a more mature sound space, like musically. And the poetry really like pushed me into that space too. And so I've kind of been filling up several notebooks probably since I was around 18, like the last 5 years. And so this Prince Neptune collection was kind of a consolidated, edited down version of a lot of those notebooks. I probably had like 300-400 poems that I'd filled up several notebooks with, and had to choose kind of 100-120 and put together this collection of work. It's probably the most honest piece of work I've ever put out, and I just thought it was a really nice way for me to kick off the next era or phase of my career.
absolutely. And what are some of the themes or discussions that you're telling through this poetry?
I touch a lot on nature, harmonious living in nature, things like that, but also a lot about freedom, rebellion, like unconventional life.
Yeah.
Not necessarily rebelling against society, but rebelling against like a conventional lifestyle, and that's something I've kind of been doing for a while now. And so it's nice to be able to like kind of talk about it in like an unfiltered, unedited way, because the music has to go through so many different filters and layers and people to like come out right. Whereas this was like words on a page, send it to my publisher. I kind of had to push to like keep some of the content in, but I got it out and I got it published, and it just felt like the most unfiltered version of me that's ever been publicized or published or put out in the world. So
Which is good for fans of you to understand, because I feel like sometimes people don't understand all the different layers and lenses that music needs to go through before
Yeah.
we get to experience it. So for them to know, like, hey, if you really want to get to know me and all of my thoughts, untouched, raw, then just
Yeah,
read these words and you'll see me as I see myself, which is so lovely. And do you have any
exactly.
kind of poetic influences or, any greats of times past that have, encouraged you?
Very many, yeah, very many. A couple from the initial seed for me was Arthur Rimbaud. He's a French symbolist poet from like the 19th century, and his influence like filtered down into inspiring like American beat poets like Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg, which like filtered down into inspiring some of the more modern poets that you'll even see on Instagram today, like Atticus, who's a friend of mine, or people like that. And so find who inspires you, you find who inspired them, you find who inspired them, and all of a sudden you're like reading like the most archaic, you know, shit you've ever read. But it's like, so, it's so great
That's
to
the legit 6 degrees of separation, right?
yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, I take inspiration from a lot of different places, but yeah, I mean, being able to talk about those kinds of things in a book is great. Being able to talk about, rebellion, or being able to talk about love and sex and romance and all this stuff is just a really like liberating thing, and especially like now being able to talk about it in music is cool too. Like I just released one song last week called Captain's Dance with the Devil, which is kind of the first of 2 songs that I'm putting out this month in conjunction with the book.
Ah,
And so just thematically like are really tied into the book, and I wanted them to kind of like accompany the book. And so the first one's out, and I'm putting the second one out in like a week and a half. So
that's so sick. You
yeah.
really thought about everything. It's like
Yeah.
poetry, we've got the song to go with. So if you're not used to one, you've got the other.
Not a lot of people really have much time for poetry, or
Mm.
so it's like, here's the music, and maybe this will carry you into like wanting to read something.
And it
So
probably does.
yeah.
Have you seen Sam Neill? He's been, reciting sonnets on his Instagram as well. Seems like a poetry revival. Once we're staying inside, suddenly we're back to tradition. We're reading books, we're touching paper, we're
Yeah.
using pens.
Sam Neill, okay, I gotta check it out.
You must. You can have a
Yeah,
virtual poetry party.
cool.
It's the real like 2020 way of doing things.
Oh yeah.
Words and writing.
Yeah, like even I had this whole like book signing tour I was gonna go on. I had to cancel it, and I ended up having to do it like virtually via like Instagram pretty much.
Ah.
And so I just had like everyone order like signed copies of the book, and they sent me boxes, and I'm doing it all from home and sending them back out, doing the readings from my house, and it's a really strange new world we're in.
I would have never considered that, how, so many of the commitments that we or, musicians and poets had pre-COVID, how they're playing out now. How do you think your industry is going to change long term?
That's what I've been talking to a lot of friends about, is that a lot of us had gigs this year, festivals, things like that. My girlfriend Miley had like 7 huge festivals
Jeez.
lined up this year that it's still up in the air. I mean, I had gigs planned, I had this whole book tour planned, and we're all talking about, we wonder when live music is going to become a thing again, because I don't think immediately after we're all given the green light to go back into the world, I don't think people are going to be rushing back out into crowds right away anyway.
Exactly.
So it's like, when is live music and large gatherings going to become a thing? I don't really know. So we're kind of having to adapt in ways that we didn't really think we were going to have to. Even like doing these concerts from home, I'm sure you've been seeing a lot of the like, global citizen ones that people have been doing, and all these different things that people have been doing to try and find ways to still connect with people and still make their music happen. So it's a really weird, really, really weird time, and it's, I think, too early to kind of say or make any prediction on where things are going to go. I don't think live music is going to be really viable way of doing things, at least for the next year.
Which is such a shame. Because when we talk about essential versus non-essential activities, so many of us are turning to creative pursuits to feel alive and whole. And It's such a shame that those same creative industries are the ones that have been so like you know, debilitatingly impacted by it, and kind of like who's looking out for the creatives who keep us all sane during this time.
Right, exactly. Because yeah, and then that line between essential and non-essential is really quite blurred at that point. Because it's like, yeah, well, you know, what do we need to survive? But then it's like, well, what do we need to also be, you know, mentally stable and mentally thriving under these circumstances as well? You know what I mean? So it's like, it really is, the lines become blurred in a sense. Because even over here, it's like liquor stores are essential services, and I'm like, are you really? You know what I mean? Grocery stores, I understand. It's like the people, you know. So the lines are blurred, I think.
And the hierarchy of needs have changed so dramatically pre and post. So we're kind of like, well, what do I need to feel alive? Maybe, you know, I don't really need like all of my electronics as often as I thought. Maybe I just need to talk to like 3 people a day.
And I think that's one of the disguised blessings of people realizing how much less they needed than initially, you know, was thought. Because I think, you know, we're all just in such a habit of consuming all day, every single day out in the world, and we're like, oh, hang on a second, that's not actually necessarily necessary for our happiness or survival, you know. So it's like, and you're also seeing a lot of the positive effects that, you know, are happening in nature as a sort of byproduct of the whole things too. So I think that's kind of like waking people up to, you know, their habits as well, which is, for me, like as an environmentalist and as someone who cares a lot about the earth, like that's been a really sort of positive. And
absolutely. And to finish up, if you could give us like 3 to 5 quick tips on how to live our best lives during isolation, what would you say?
Yeah, okay. I would say exercise is great. I've been doing a lot of Pilates and a lot of exercise from home. Like, you can literally do it in the space of a towel, pretty much. You know, you can do it in your toilet if you want, in your bathroom. Some outlet, some creative outlet, whether it's like an instrument or painting or drawing or anything creative that exercises, you know, that side of the brain. Reading a good book is a good one.
Reading Prince Neptune.
Reading my book. Reading my book. FaceTiming with or connecting with like a family member or somebody that you wouldn't usually have time to or think about connecting with, I think is a good one. Whether it's a friend or a grandparent or a cousin or something. And then cooking something or trying something you never tried before in the kitchen is fun too. Yeah.
Amazing. Cody Simpson's rules for living in isolation. I love it. Thank you so much for taking this time for this virtual chat. I feel very 2020, but also very 1950 in a lot of ways.
I love it. Thank you. Those questions were awesome.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're a lover of pop culture or just want something to binge, we've got over 70 hours of amazing Build Series Sydney content. So get amongst it and stay tuned for who we have coming up next. See you.